Yeah, that'd be great.
Good morning to everybody. We'll get right to it, and thank you for joining us today. This is an important announcement that a lot of people have been waiting for. First of all, I wanted to introduce Senate Pro Tem Senator Jim Hendren, who's with me today, the Speaker of the House, Matthew Shepard. We have our highway commissioners that are here, as well as Scott Bennett, CEO. Thank you for joining us. We have Mr. Joe Quinn, our CEO of the Good Roads Foundation, with me at the podium, as well as CEO Shannon Newton of the Arkansas Trucking Association. We have in this room many legislators. I see the Minority Leader, Representative Charles Blake, Senator Keith Ingram. I hope he's here. He had another committee meeting, but I know he'll be joining us. There he is. And so many other of the legislators that's going to play an important role in this and in developing it as well. So thank you. And Larry Walther, Director of Department of Finance, I just want to recognize him for playing a key role with all of your team as well. Ladies and gentlemen, ever since the legislative session began, everybody has been asking me, what is the governor's plan? What is my plan for a new long-term highway funding program for the state? The more important question is what type of plan we can agree upon together. And that's what we have been working hard to do over the last few weeks and months. Based upon our hard work over the last 2 weeks, I am pleased to announce today a $300 million highway funding plan for the state of Arkansas. You might ask, well, why $300 million? Well, I would point out that, first of all, it is the largest single highway plan in our history, and it will allow our highway department to maintain our roads and highways, but also to allocate additional funding for new lane construction. According to the Arkansas Department of Transportation, the funding provided for on a $300 million plan to the state during the first 10-year period of the program would provide the ability to maintain our interstates in good condition, would improve most highways of the Arkansas Primary Highway Network, which is a system of approximately 7,900 miles of roadways. It would improve other highways not on that primary network. It would allow the department to concentrate more maintenance efforts on the lesser traveled routes. It would replace every structural deficient and posted bridge in the state. It would provide a second Connecting Arkansas program that could address some of the capital and capacity needs across the state, and would allow additional funding for safety improvements as well. That is what a new highway program means to the people of the state of Arkansas. And so the second reason, though, that this $300 million level is significant is that it is the top dollar amount that, in my judgment, the people of Arkansas can afford. There is a limit on how much we should spend and can spend, because whenever we set a spending program, someone has to pay for it. And what guides me is the worker in a rural part of Arkansas that must drive 30 miles to work and back every day in their vehicle and put gas in the car. What guides my thinking is that farmer that has to get his products to market and is driving on a difficult road that's not properly maintained. And so this plan achieves the right balance. It is affordable, it is prudent for our budget, and it is reasonable. Now let me go through some of the elements of this plan. First of all, if you see to my right here, the long-term highway plan as itemized. On the left side you have the foundation of the plan, which is $205 million, which would be the extension of the half-cent sales tax that we currently have. So there's no new tax there. It's an extension of the existing tax, $205 million, which would be net to the state. In addition, the cities and counties would get their share, which would be $44 million as well. And then the other part of the plan would be $95 million, which is additional ongoing funding that is necessary to be passed in this legislative session. The $205 million, the extension of the half-cent sales tax, would need to be referred to the voters by an amendment through this session, and they would be voted on in November 2020, and that would give it time to set in motion before the existing program expires. And so if you add the $205 million extension plus the $95 million, you have a $300 million program. And now if you go over to the chart on the right, it explains how you get to the $95 million requirement through this legislative session. First of all, you'd have $58 million in the amount on the black that would be from a new index on gasoline and diesel, which would be equivalent to a 3-cent raise in the gasoline tax, and it would be a 6 cents increase in the diesel tax, and that would net out for the state $58 million. Now let me emphasize, if you're concerned about that word index, the indexing is limited to 1/10 of 1 cent per year. And so, but that would allow it to be a 3 cents and 6 cents as we enact that. The second part would be the smallest amount, which is almost $2 million, $1.9 million, which is the registration fees on electric and hybrid vehicles. And this is logical because we are taxing those that are running on diesel and gas for our highways, and those that are the growing element of electric and hybrid cars are not paying the same amount because they're not acquiring the same amount of gasoline. And so registration fees on those vehicles will be an important part of it, of $2 million. And then the last part is the $35 million is what gets you to the $95 million total. And the $35 million would be dedicated state casino tax revenues and the utilization of other funding from our general revenue to guarantee $35 million per year going into this highway plan. Now let me elaborate on that just for a moment. Currently, what we receive from the gaming industry is $31.2 million every year from the gaming industry. That will continue to flow through the state to the state of Arkansas into the general revenue. But that does not account for the growth that will happen when the casinos are in place. And so the additional revenue that will come in through the casino investment will allow that money to flow to the highway department. The advantage of that is that, one, it's going to gradually increase. It'll have a growth opportunity in the revenue. Secondly, it's a guaranteed amount. In the short years, we'll make sure and guarantee that it's $35 million a year. And so that's a guarantee from our restricted reserve fund as well as whatever other sources we need to make sure that that commitment is made. But that protects the general revenue side because it's a new funding source that we didn't have before the voters put it in last year. We will be dedicating that growth in terms of the casinos over and above what we receive already to the highway department. And so that is the $95 million plan with the additional $205 million gives you the $300 million plan that is needed. Before I turn it over to the Speaker and Pro Tem, let me say this is a historic highway plan. It's the largest in history. But it is designed not to jeopardize the general revenue funds that are critical for K through 12 education, higher education, and the other needs of our state, including public safety. And so it's a balanced plan that does not harm us in terms of our education and the primary needs of our state. Thirdly, it utilizes a new revenue source, which is the casino tax revenues. Fourthly, it provides to the highway department multiple and growing revenue streams that they have been deficient in the past. Hybrid and electric vehicles, while it's very small now, very well 10 years from now be a primary growing source of revenue for the highway department. sales tax revenue, while it's $205 million now, over time as our state grows, that's a revenue stream that will increase. The gaming taxes is a little bit unpredictable, but I have confidence that it's going to be to meet the need of the $35 million commitment within a couple of years. And so with that, it's got a growing part of the revenue as well. If it grows, that revenue goes to highways. And while there is an increase in gas and diesel taxes, they are held to 3 cents for gas per gallon for motorists and 6 cents for diesel. That I do not diminish as being significant, but all the indications are that is absorbable and that is reasonable for the increased needs that we have in terms of highways. Even with these increased user fees, Arkansas's middle and low income will have net tax reductions this year as a result of the $150 million per year in tax reductions that we've already enacted, the low income and the middle income taxes. And then, as a result also, the $60 million reduction this year that will go into effect on the grocery tax. So with that, there is significant tax reductions for low, middle income, even though we'll be asking them to pay this amount in addition for gas and diesel taxes. This does take a majority vote of the House and the Senate, and with that, I'll let the Speaker and Pro Tem either say how we're going to get it done or how they're going to fix it. Mr. Pro Tem.
Well, thank you, Governor. Just a couple weeks ago, we were here with a similar announcement about tax relief and the tax cut bill. And as we stand here today, I want to tell you that this process that we've gone through on highways mirrors exactly what we went through on tax reform. It's a result of input from the House, from the Senate, from both parties, from a wide group of people. It wasn't the plan that we started with, just as the tax cut plan was not the plan we started with. I think it does strike a good balance. I think the amount is one that is going to address the needs. As we stood here talking about tax cuts a couple weeks ago, one of the reasons was we realized that we can't be competitive in Arkansas with the highest tax rate of surrounding states. But we also stand here today realizing we can't be competitive if our highways are falling apart. So we have to address both, and I'm proud of the state that we're doing that. Let me just also say, with regard to the politics of it, as you know, after that press conference, we went out and ran that tax cut bill through the Senate a few days later, and it came up a few votes short. And it became very clear that there were a lot of legislators who had legitimate concerns that they wanted to know how highways were going to be addressed. I met with those on the Senate end, and I assured them that we were serious about it, that there was going to be a plan brought forth, and it passed the next day. And I want to, again, commend those on the House who have the same concerns. It is a legitimate request to say, how are we going to fund highways as we begin to put our budget together with regard to tax cuts? And I think what you see here today is the answer to that question. It's a responsible path. It's a path that I think will address the needs of Arkansas, and I'm confident that we can get it done.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Governor. I just would like to begin by thanking the Governor for his efforts and the Pro Tem for his efforts as well. This was a process that took time, even through the weekend, to reach a point that we felt we were comfortable that we had a plan that could garner the support that we needed on both ends of the Capitol. I'd like to recognize Representative Jett, Representative Holcomb, and Representative Davis. I see they're here today, and all three of them have been individuals who've worked very hard on highways for a long time, and so I wanted to make sure to recognize them. I think with regard to this plan, I think we have a plan that takes into account a lot of different ideas on highways. As many of you know, for me, with regard to the idea of potentially referring out the half-cent sales tax, which we did my first term back in 2011, I thought it was important to show the people of Arkansas that we have tried to do some things differently. And so I appreciate the Governor's willingness to work with me and others with regard to the $35 million. That provides us a good base of support from the funds that we already have available. And then with the gaming revenue, the possibility of growing that amount over time is very attractive, and I think it's something that has a very positive impact and allows us to assure Arkansans that when it comes to any proposed tax increase, that we've looked in-house first to try and do as much as we can with the resources that we have available. And I look forward to the opportunity to bring this bill forward into the House. And I think that what we have is a bill that hopefully will help to those members on the House end who wanted to see the highway program, wanted to see a plan introduced. We now have that. And so I'm hopeful that that will allow us to move forward with not only the highway plan, but also with the tax cuts in the next several days. Thank you.
And before I ask Mr. Quinn to come up, I did want to add that the Senate Pro Tem and his fellow senators and the Speaker and the House have been extraordinary partners as we've developed this. This is a plan that has been shaped by the thinking of everyone that's here, and I'm grateful to them and their partnership. And with that, Mr. Joe Quinn, Chairman of the Good Roads Foundation.
Thank you, Governor. We appreciate your leadership. We appreciate the Senate and House leadership. This is a meaningful plan. This is a plan that can impact the quality of life in our state. Friday afternoon, I was on the phone with the governor. Later Friday afternoon, I was in a tire store in Fayetteville. My daughter is a college student at Fayetteville, and she had taken out a tire on a pothole, and then I was informed that the rim needed to be replaced also. The point of that is across this state, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of families every day who are dealing with issues like that, tire damage, car damage, because of the quality of our roads. We have in the past talked about this in terms of orange barrels and jobs and asphalt, but this is more about the human face of this issue. This is about the busy mom who's dealing with traffic congestion, trying to pick up her kid from school and get that child to the dental appointment or whatever. This is about the farmer in a rural area who is going 9 miles out of his way because a rural road that he normally drives on is not in good enough shape to handle the heavy farm equipment. We have bridges in counties in our state that can't handle a fully loaded school bus. I think that's an interesting statistic at a time when, as a society, we are all talking about school safety, and maybe we need to think about fundamentals about bridges that are unable to handle school buses. This is a robust plan. It's $300 million. It affects virtually every small town and city in the state. When you heard the governor read the list of things that can be accomplished, that will impact tens of thousands of Arkansans. So once again, the Good Roads Foundation, our mandate is to remind our citizens why this affects the quality of life, this affects workforce, this affects business, this affects our school superintendents. So we are proud to stand here today and to remind the people of our state why this matters so very much.
Thank you. And Ms. Shannon Newton, since part of that's diesel tax that impacts the truckers, would you make a comment?
Thank you, Governor, and thank you to the leadership of the Senate and the House. We're very honored to have been engaged in conversations over the last several years and then more intensely in the last few weeks to help craft a solution to this problem that we've been facing and trying to come up with a meaningful solution for quite some time. As you know, the Arkansas highways are the workplace for our industry. We send our drivers out over the road each day. There are thousands of drivers who spend their days on Arkansas highways, and their safety and their workplace environment is of utmost importance to our industry. And so we look forward to continuing to invest in Arkansas highways so that their workplaces can be safe, so that the roads can be well maintained for our equipment, and so that we can better, more efficiently and reliably deliver our customers freight on time. So we are very proud of this plan, and we look forward to working with all of the leadership and all of the groups that are here today in ushering it through the General Assembly.
Thank you. And with that, we have to turn it over to questions.
Governor, could you explain a little bit more the new index on the gas and diesel prices, where we are right now as opposed to where we're going with that?
Well, of course, this is a calculation, so this would be a tax on the wholesale level that's computed that impacts it at 3 cents and 6 cents at the retail level. It's just easier for people to understand, and that calculation is made. But this is a new tax because, for a variety of reasons, but the indexing part, we did not want to make it burdensome on people where they fear that this is going to just be an ongoing tax that they get hit with every year. This is limited to 1/10 of 1 cent every year. And so with that kind of limitation, you can see that it is a technical indexing. It's indexing, but it is such a small amount that it should not be have an adverse impact on the motorist. So it's capped at that.
Is this what came out of the task force? Is this different?
Well,
One of the recommendations of the Tax Reform Task Force was to look at indexing future road fuel taxes. Other states we looked at have done that, and what it has done is prevent you from getting into such a bind 10, 15 years down the road. This is not the type of indexing that we were looking at in detail, which was tied to CPI and had higher caps, but it is a similar method, but a much smaller amount.
So is it going to require a three-fourths vote or simple majority?
simple majority vote, because it's and DF&A and the legal folks can answer that more technical, but it's my understanding because it is a different tax, it is a majority vote.
Given the resistance there's been in the past, even to referring out taxes, the anti-tax pledges people have made, I guess you and legislative leaders, how confident are you that even with simple majority, you can get past that opportunity?
I'll let the Speaker and Pro Tem answer that.
I think that we're very confident. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't put a plan out there if we thought it had no chance of success. But we also understand that that you have to take the votes, and we have to do the job of making the case to the members. Clearly, highways are a big issue. I've said over and over that over my 8 years here, I don't think that the highway issue has been as talked about as it is right now. Among members who maybe in the past were a little reluctant to look at some of these alternatives. And so I think we have a great opportunity now, but ultimately we're confident we can get the votes, but we still have to make the case to the membership and answer their questions and allow them the opportunity to vet the proposal.
Governor, Mr. Speaker, why do you think that is? Why is it being talked about so much? What's changed since the last session when this couldn't get?
Because it's on people's minds. I called a number of legislators over the weekend and said, what's people talking about in your districts? And it's highways. As I called people and said, we need your vote for the tax plan, their response in some instances was, I've got to see a plan for highways first. That's what people are talking about. And so why is it? Because we're a growing state. And because we're a state that has a lot of roads that farmers and workers depend upon, and every day they drive it, they recognize they're not sufficient, and they need to have funding. And so we've looked at this very closely, as you know, and it clearly, I've never seen the public in a greater mood for a highway plan, actually demanding of the legislators, don't come home without a highway plan. That's what I'm hearing, and I think that's why the legislators are being so vocal to me about this is what's needed.
Governor, Democrats have been opposed to tapping into general revenue if it meant issues like education could suffer. So moving forward, when you look at this plan, does this mean that education will not be subject to any revenue transfers?
Education remains our constitutional, our highest priority. This plan protects education. It protects K through 12 and higher education. And it does that because their reliance is upon the traditional sales tax and the income tax, those areas that grow in our state. But this carves out a new area of the casino revenues that will be applied toward the highways, which is growth for them, but it does not diminish the traditional support for education. So that's why it is a balance. Now, to the speaker's point, there was some interest in a revenue transfer, some support from general revenue, and so that role comes in really the first year that the casino revenues are not coming in, and so we will be funding that largely out of our restricted reserve fund that was set aside for this type of emergency or tax cuts. And so we'll be able to put general revenues in there, but as the casinos grow, that will take up the load to meet that $35 million requirement.
You guys put out some numbers, the state was going to lose 3 years worth of general revenue for the casinos. Have you guys changed your calculations?
Those numbers were before there were two major announcements, one of them being in Hot Springs, of course, with their expansion, the other one being in West Memphis with hundreds of millions of dollars of expansion. And so those numbers were before the reality set in as to the expansions that are in place. And so there is a fresh look at it, and there's a comfort level with this based upon what we see over the long term as the growth in casino revenues.
So there's no budget hold that you mentioned that earlier, the budget hold that would be in the budget?
There's not a budget hole that will impact adversely education and other needs of the state. There is some uncertainty. No one knows for sure as to the first year revenue stream from casinos. Nobody knows that for sure. And so that's why there is a commitment to make sure that $35 million is met. I'm comfortable with that it doesn't jeopardize the other needs of our state, but it also makes a commitment of general revenue to make sure that it is a solid $300 million highway plan.
Can we give a wish list for what the money will go to, like for I-49?
I will not get into that today. But I would expect that before the half-cent sales tax is voted on by the public, that they will want to know with greater clarity what exactly the Highway Department will plan for that construction, what they will be able to do with that. But I'll leave that to the Highway Department and the great commissioners that are here to formulate that.
Do you get a sense from talking with legislators about this that has this shaken out some more votes in favor of your tax cut plan, and what's the timing that you want to see this highway plan taken?
Again, would the Speaker or Pro Tem like to address that?
I think that this will allow us to pick up a few more votes on the tax cut proposal. I really don't think that oftentimes it's not so much about whether they're for or against the tax cut proposal. It's a matter of timing and what other items are on the table, and the fact that the highway discussion for a number of members is something that they wanted brought to the forefront now as opposed to waiting till later on. And so that's part of, I think that's part of the timing at this point, is hopefully that will assist with getting the necessary votes on the tax cut proposal. I think it will, but again, we will continue to talk with members and work on that as the tax cut proposal should run in committee tomorrow, and then I would anticipate having it on the floor in the next few days after that.
I'll just add, it already has in the Senate. As I said earlier, I had some members, Senator Rice and some Democrats, who did not vote the first time because they wanted some answers about highways. And my pledge and the pledge of the governor was they would have those, and they would have them soon, and they do, a few days later. So I think just as it had an effect in the Senate, it'll have an effect in the House. Again, that was heavy on a lot of people's mind because it is, as the governor said, an issue that we hear a lot about back home. So I think it will have a huge impact on both ends.
Is there a final question?
The other question was just the timing of it. When do you want to see the legislature take this up?
Well, we've got to get our tax bill passed. I want that passed and addressed this week. I think that's the plan in the House. We'll have discussions with leadership as to what their thoughts are in terms of what goes next. So we'll be listening to people. Obviously, this will be ready to move very quickly. We have a bill that's in draft form that's still got a little more work to do, but we'll be vetting that. Hopefully this bill will be filed this week and we'll proceed from there. Thank you all very much.